one too many snowstorms. My wife and I were just, about 2004, we had kind of tapped out the market there in New Hampshire. There wasn't really a lot of potential for growth. So we knew we needed to move if, I wanted to start a career and kind of, start a family. We didn't want to do it there. It was not the place that we wanted to be. And we sort of just was like, all right, where doesn't it snow? Where is it really not? And everyone from New Hampshire moves to LA and then they hate it and they move right back. And we were like, we are not making that mistake. And my wife happened to say, like, hey, my brother lived in San Diego for a long time. I've been a couple times. It's beautiful. Let's go check it out. And so we just came and never went back.
Yeah, my friend's son went out there to school, I believe, and I think that was 25 years ago. Never came back. Just
Yeah,
loved
that'll
it.
do it.
Hey,
Morning, Michael.
morning. Wally, you're on mute, but did you get to meet Dan?
You already know them. You know one another. I tell you, the hockey world's better connected in the States than it is here in Canada. So you got three Americans on doing the right thing, and I'm still waiting for some Canadians to get back on. They're always doing their thing, and I keep telling them I'm going to buy them a snorkel and fins so they can keep their head above water, because once you get into the rat race, you forget about what you're doing and why you're doing it. So,
Yeah, that's fair.
I was giving Dan the lowdown yesterday on the call, and I'm glad he joined and told him it's all. Sometimes it's structured and sometimes it's not, but it's all good.
well, Dan, I'm going to ask you just to quickly introduce yourself. I'm taking some notes down. You did mention you write for the coaches site. You're in San Diego, and you're coaching a U8 team right now.
Well, U12.
U12. Okay.
Yep.
And what would you describe your job title?
So my job title at the rink is I'm the director of coaching education and development. So it's my job. New coaches come in, and even our current coaches, just to make sure that they have all those tools and things they need to continuously educate themselves and not just become stagnant. Like, did it when I was a kid, kind of coaches. And San Diego is a really great retirement place. So we do get a lot of ex-players who come here to live it out, and they want to coach their kids. They want to coach, and they come in and they're, sometimes they've never heard of ADM. They don't know state hockey. They just get the kids. I saw a bantam practice the other day where the coach tried to line up a gauntlet, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And so, like, just making sure that we have a library at the rink of books, and drill books and all these things, and the library, and it's just I made it my passion project to really educate our coaches and to make sure those new ones that come in have the support they need also to thrive and stick around.
So, Dan, do you have an actual, like a room or office or a place where coaches can sit and, like you said, you have a library, they can sit, they can read and do that, or a locker room, or what's that setup?
We have an office space at the rink where, like, so our director of hockey has his own little office, and out front of that is like a big open area table. We have food and snacks, and put all the free goodies that get sent to us there. That's where the library is, and there's a great place to sit and read if you want, or just meet with other coaches, things like that.
Is that part of like the ice rental, or is that separate? Is that something they just give you, or how's that work?
That's just there. It's just for us to use. So it's not separate. It's just that's just like the hockey office area. So that's where our director works his day to day, and then the rest of us just use it as needed.
Perfect. Well,
Dan, before I'm going to get Tom Malloy to introduce himself and Jordan, I have a question here. You said there are some ex-hockey players there. I'm assuming a few Canadians, but if not, it doesn't matter. They've all played hockey. And generally speaking, they're pretty open to the hockey players that have played at a high level. I've found to be very open to and receptive to any kind of feedback that people with teaching experience and coaching experience in terms of the process, they've been very receptive to that. Is that the same in your case, or are you meeting roadblocks?
No, it really is the case. There's sometimes a little hurdle to get over that. We had an ECHL player come a year ago and came in and was really just kind of dead set on, I know how I'm going to coach my team. This is how I'm going to do it. And really wasn't all that open and receptive. And his team lost every single game that season. And, I can't put it on him. It's not just his fault. So sometimes teams just don't do as well. But I went and watched a few of his practices, and I really watched a lot of individual stuff, a lot of kids waiting in line. And so as the season was winding down, it was really players and having to rebuild. I said, like, hey, can we chat? And I chatted with him about, like, my team at the same level, we had just gone to state championships. And I didn't think I had kids on my team that were so much better than his. That's why we did it. But I felt my team had a different cohesion. We played different. We played as a team, and they really had bought into what we were doing. And so I just went over what we did. And because he had had a rough season, he was receptive to it. He spent his whole summer educating himself, figuring out what we're doing. I shared drills and plans with him. And this year, he's almost got the same exact team with a few new kids, and they're right in the mix with us now. And they look like a different team. They play together differently, and they think on the fly, and they're not just skating from cone to cone at practice, and there's stations. And so, yeah, like, that's a great example of someone who came in sort of dead set and then really was like, oh, wait, what I'm doing isn't working. How do I fix that? And then we've got a couple coaches that come in, and they're just ready to go. They're like, hey, how I was coached was brutal. I was yelled at and I hated my coach. How do I not be that coach? Oh, I think you're back on mute, Wally.
But everybody here has experienced what you've been through. I'm going to ask Jordan and Tom to introduce themselves. And Tom probably has the most background of anybody relative to providing materials, resources, drills with video at every possible level. And so, Tom, would you introduce yourself to Dan, please?
Yeah, my name's Tom Malloy, and I've been coaching about as long as Wally has. We used to play against him, intermediate hockey, when we were both done our other hockey. And we're both phys ed teachers. And in the 80s, well, even late 70s, I didn't like the way, because I'm a phys ed teacher, I really didn't like the way practices were run, and I hated the practices when I played. There was nothing really much to them. So I really started studying the Europeans. George Kingston brought a guy in every year that coached in the Canada Cups and this sort of thing. And I met a guy named Johanny Wallström from Finland. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And we worked together, and I've been to Finland about a dozen times. And I really learned how they do things. And we wrote the program for Austria together. And we kind of got along because we taught phys ed very similarly, lots of games, stuff like this. And I've coached, for 13 years of men's college hockey and 10 years of women's college hockey and all kinds of kids hockey. And right now I'm back to coaching U13 girls. We played in boys league. So last night, and I was really fortunate. My son's coaching with me, which I really like. And then one of the parents happened to be Cassie Campbell, and she volunteered to step in. So the three of us are the coaches of this team, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And playing in the boys league, we've won about 3/4 of our games, but we outplayed the other team. Wally was there the other night. We outshot them 40-18, but lost 3-2 because we don't shoot as well as the boys shoot. But yeah, and every day I'm posting stuff right now on, I got a coaching site, what's it called? Ice Hockey Coaching Youth to Pro. And stuff, I collect stuff over the years, I go take little 1-2 minute videos of what pro teams, and like being in Calgary, there's a lot of national teams that practice here and this sort of thing. And I break them down, figure out what people are doing so I can stay up in the game that way. So that's pretty well about me.
Thanks very much, Tom.
Nice to meet you.
I see that Tim's on. He's been away a while, but Jordan, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself. Jordan and I are close friends. Jordan's coaching a midget AA U18 girls team. He's coached high levels of female hockey, played a pretty high level of hockey in his day, and he's been a principal of a school. He is a principal of a school, managing to coach and provide great leadership with girls hockey here in Calgary. So Jordan, please introduce yourself to Dan.
Well, I think you just did, Wally. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. I'm, as he said, coaching U18 AA female hockey and a principal in an elementary school of 800 kids. So it's being around young people is my day and my evenings. And it's something obviously that I enjoy, and much like you talk about motivation to coach is passion to give back to the game as well as stay involved in the game and engaged in it. And it also has lots of applicable pieces to my work life as well, in creating a team amongst our staff and in working towards a goal as well. So there's all of that piece, and I think that it's one of the sport is a passion that drives me, but it's ultimately about creating better humans. So that's where I use the game as a vehicle to get to, and that's kind of my motivation behind the whole thing of being involved. I like being involved in these Sharks calls because there's always something new that pops out, or something that reminds you of something in them, and that piece. So it's great to have another person join in.
Thanks, Jordan. I'm going to let Tim introduce himself, and I'm sure he won't cover all the bases. Played at the highest level, coached at the highest level, and he's also worked at the youngest level. And it was a pleasure to be a close friend of Tim. So, Tim, would you introduce yourself? It looks like you're still in Phoenix. Are you?
I am. I'm here till December 7th. Just get in from my morning run. It's actually chilly here in Phoenix, but not anything like Calgary. Yeah, so nice to see you, Dan, meet you. And Peter, like, have we met Peter? Your name rings a bell.
Yeah, I've been on here a little bit. My background, I currently just retired from coaching NCAA hockey at Post University, where I was there for 7 years. Prior to that, I was at the gunnery school, prep school for 11 years. Prior to that, coached ACHA club hockey at Central Connecticut State University for 7 years there. Coached youth hockey, AAA, done a lot of stuff in New York State. That's where I met Mike Benelli in the education program there. So that's kind of the quick version.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I think I was at University of Vermont, the women's program from 2006 to 2012. So maybe that's where your name rings a bell, being at gunnery probably during that time.
Yeah, that could have been too, Tim. I also did some pro scouting for Alain, so for Alois there. So and a little bit in the USHL with my old departed friend there, Red Gendron. So yeah, I've been around a little bit.
Okay, well, just really quickly, guys, Wally kind of covered some of the bases. Good to see you again, Mike, Tom, Wally. You know, I played, as Wally mentioned, I played 12 years professionally about 500 games in the NHL. I coached a couple of years in Atlanta with the Thrashers. Couple of tough years. And really, I've been coaching for over 30 years. I'm not coaching currently. Just started this snowbird thing going down to Phoenix, so I'm going to spend some time down here. Decided to just sort of take a back seat, at least for a year anyway. Been to the Olympics twice as a coach, assistant coach with the Canadian women in 2006. Just recently, assistant coach with the Danish national women's team in Beijing, and for the last 2.5 years. So lots of experience hockey-wise, but I don't know anything. So.
Hey, Timmy, there's a you remember Ray Clearwater?
Oh shit, Dad. We used to call him Dad. He was a KG veteran on my very first pro team in New Haven in the American League, and he was a KG, I think at that time, 36-year-old veteran, really smart, steady, really good player, and even better person, really. So say hello if you bump into
I ran into Andre Dore. They were having like an 80th birthday party for him or some kind of event, and I do a lot of work with well, Andre does a lot of stuff down here. He has a hockey company that refurbishes sticks and things like that. And then Mike Backman, I think, was on that same team too.
Yeah, Backy, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you see Andre or Ray or Backy, you can tell them I'm Friday night this week, tomorrow night, I'm going to have dinner with Steve Baker, who was a goalie on not that team, but their team the year after in New Haven. He was he played at Union College and played for a bunch of years for the Rangers. And I haven't seen him since then, so it'll be kind of interesting. But yeah.
Yeah, I definitely will. Yeah, I see Andre a lot, and he's in a lot of these rinks around here.
Yeah, good guy too. Real good.
Really
player.
good guy. Really good guy.
Yeah, and he was in St. Louis with me for a bit as well.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So guys, I really appreciate Dan jumping on. I just wanted to just kind of let you know kind of how we cross paths. So he does do a lot of work with the coaches site. He writes a lot of really great articles. He's always, posting some great stuff on social media. He's definitely, professional hockey focused in a youth hockey world, which is great to see, and kind of seeing the impact he makes for, the coaching education of, especially the non-mandated pieces of it, like the pieces where coaches go and find and research and look and obviously like a call like this, I thought would be great for him to jump on. I know he's in a different time zone, so he said he's often driving, but I think it's just one of those things where even for me, sometimes when you're working and you can have this on in the background and some of the great conversations that go on, I thought he really fits the mold of somebody that's a lifelong learner and obviously likes to take what he can get and then use it with his own program. So I thought he'd be a great fit here, Wally, and having an opportunity to jump on the call. So I appreciate you guys welcoming him.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mike. Dan, as Tim was talking, Tim and I both worked, as well as Tom, with a community development sports company called P3 Sports in Cochrane, Alberta. And we had contracts with numerous associations to work at the U8 and U11 levels. And basically, we created a model of practice which combined teams, but they mixed teams up relative to skill level. And the kids went in an appropriate skill group and rotated between 3 stations. And the stations was one boring station, the skill repetition station. And then the compete station was one-on-one races and battles. And the game station was a variety of small area games. So that model, I really believe, I've seen it used at the midget AAA level effectively. Coaches spoke highly of it. Parents spoke highly of it in terms of the ability to teach at the level of the group you're working with. and keeping them really involved. So I just wanted to let you know that. I believe they're still doing that in Cochrane with that company. They work with a number of associations. The model is a popular one, but some of us, we just stay with our usual models, what works for us, and everybody's here is capable of running their ice times their way. I've just found that for beginning coaches, the 3-station concept and being responsible for one of the stations helps them become better coaches. So I just wanted to share that with you. Now we have another person who's been on regularly. Dan, you may not know Sammy Joe. Sammy's a 3-time Olympian for Team Canada's national program and presently managing a pro team, a female team, and she is coaching her daughter, I believe, in U8 hockey. Is that true, Sammy? Okay.
That is true. Yeah, she just had her 7th birthday on the weekend, so that is correct. Hi, everyone.
And now, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but Dan's in San Diego. He's works for the coaches site, does a lot of writing, provides a lot of resources, and he's coaching a U12 team out there. But more importantly, he's working with coach development in San Diego, where there are a lot of retired hockey players who are learning about coaching. Of course, they assume they know it all at the beginning, but soon find out that it's a little different. So, Sammy, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Well, hi, Dan. I went to school down in California, so played at a lot of rinks all around there. And I was lucky enough to get to play with Wally and Tim, and have been part of this group for a while. I got to know these guys, and yeah, I now am the president of the Toronto Six in the Premier Hockey Federation. So this has been quite the whirlwind for me back into hockey administration, which I am really loving. My general manager is Angela James, who's in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and my head coach is Geraldine Heaney, who is also in the Hockey Hall of Fame. However, my ownership group also includes Ted Nolan. So I actually was able to meet with Ted this weekend, and he's going to help Geraldine. So finding coach mentors, I think, at every level is really important. And when you have people of certain acumen, it's hard to necessarily find people that they respect, that are respected. But I think at every single level, we can all use mentorship, and we can all use somebody to commiserate with, and just assistance and learning and growing. And so that's my biggest mission with this organization, is ensure that everybody within their roles can learn and grow, and as Wally says, become better citizens of the world. So it's a process, but one that I'm loving. So that's me.
Well, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Dan, Sammy dropped the word which I really am uncomfortable with, and that's mentorship. How would you describe your role relative to what you're doing? Is that what you're trying to do? You're trying to guide people, and you seem to be having success down there.
Yeah, there's a little mentorship to it when someone really, they need to approach me. I don't want to come in and just tell a coach how to coach. I want to give them the tools to succeed. I don't try to micromanage anybody unless I really think they're doing something detrimental. But they all need to find their way in coaching. But we recently had a case where we had a coach in place and an assistant coach who was just a dad, and this was for a team that none of them made one of the travel teams, but they really wanted to play tournaments. And so we decided to put together this team that would play in tournaments, but they would play our in-house league throughout the season. And then that coach that we had just up and left. He just moved and was gone. And this dad was like, I don't want this program apart. My son's happier than ever. He goes, but I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I can tell them shoot. I can tell them block that shot, but I can't do anything other than that. And we didn't have someone in place right away. And so I stepped in to help him develop what every practice would look like. Showed up to half his practices just to check in and see how they're running, and just spent a lot of time with him to really mentor him through what that process is. What are you looking for in a practice? And then when you see a game, what should you be like on the bench? Because the other coach just kind of yelled a lot at a bunch of kids who weren't highly skilled. And so I was like, no, let's turn it into a positive. Don't ever yell at them on the bench. Even if they're losing 10-0, when they come off, let them know that great thing they did in their shift. And so we kept working with him throughout the year. And now, like, he's probably one of our most beloved coaches. Parents that, know that either I can't afford to do travel hockey or my kid's just not there are like lined up to be on his team because they know their kid's just going to have the best time while developing. And win or lose, it's like they have a barbecue after the game. They get together. And so, like, turning him into somebody who now, like, he's like, okay, cool. How do I join the coach's site? Where are you getting all these resources? And he was just a dad that wanted to help. Like, his original intent was to chase pucks and make some memories with his kid. And now he's like, all in on how do I do this better? And I love that because that added a bonus to our program because now we have this team that, hey, like, it's almost like the first Mighty Ducks. Like, it's this ragtag group of kids, but they just come in and have the best time, and those kids are going to stick around. And so for us, like, that's where I kind of feel my role is helping guide coaches that need it, making sure they have that new stuff, but also as a new coach comes in, that guy could have been run out of our rink so quick by losing games and handling it wrong. And him and his kid would be gone, and then we'd have all these kids that don't want to play hockey anymore.
Yeah, Sammy Joe, Dan brought up a call. He was on a call with me yesterday. We did like a directors club call, and he was one of our guests. And I'm taking his post-practice barbecues. I'm going to start using those. I think that's a great. Now maybe in San Diego you can do it a little easier than Calgary, but I think it's I think it's unbelievable that just those little things that you do to build a community and make it feel like a travel program in an in-house environment is really fantastic. I love it.
I think the best thing that I've done so far with my the 7-year-olds is that they all get to bring stuffed animals to the games and practices, and they get to line them up on the top of the bench when we're playing. But more importantly, they have, I guess it's like a little restaurant for these stuffed animals at the end in the dressing room, and they all get together. And this is how the kids have kind of met each other, is like through introducing their little stuffed animals to each other. And that to me is like the most special part of the game. Maybe I'm going to bring that to the Toronto Six.
Dan and Mike, one of my great friends has since passed, a sports psychologist I work with in New Haven and Los Angeles, Frank Lodato, used to say, the thing I love about hockey is when you win, you have a beer. And when you lose, you have a beer. And so it's the barbecue theme, even at the highest levels. Like, you gotta find the joy in the game, absolutely. And Dan, I noticed that you have a harder time finding the joy since you have your last place Pittsburgh Penguins shirt on this morning.
Yeah, it's been rough.
Not much better, and it's been a long time since you could say last place Pittsburgh Penguins. So they will rise, I'm sure.
One piece of advice for these barbecues, I made sure to recruit a kid whose dad owned a local brewery.
Yeah. Right. No, but I love that. We do that a lot with the programming that I work with. Like, anytime we institute, kind of outside the box thinking to some of these parents, we've been trying to implement, especially in the smaller programs I work with here in the Northeast, is to implement like these Sunday night open hockey, pond hockey sessions, and then really turn it into a pond hockey session. Where you go outside in the parking lot and somebody has a fire pit, and the parents can sit around. They don't watch their kids. They don't go inside and watch the pickup hockey. And there's 18-year-olds out there and 6-year-olds out there. They figure it out, but it's such a different vibe when you see all the different parents interacting and intertwining with each other. And but you have to manufacture it, right? Because they would all go to their own corners if you didn't. So, but now
that's a really great
like,
idea that it forces community, which is essentially what everybody's looking for, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just gives. I mean, I love. I mean, and my biggest fear, and I think some of the people I work with, like, oh, they're just gonna get like, what was the term yesterday? I forget. Dan, you want them to communicate, not commiserate. And
Yes.
I think that was a great, like, they're not just in their corners bitching and moaning. They're communicating and they're talking and they're figuring, oh, what'd you do with your kid at that age? Oh, I was doing this. And, oh, look at my son. Or, yo, your kid's so great at, really helping my little kids. And like, that's why even in the lacrosse programs I run, I always get the older high school kids, like, even if they're not the lead, right? I give them the directions, I give them drills, I tell them what they got to do. The kids absolutely will listen to a high school player 100 times more than me, and they love it. And the high school players, they're not jaded and bitter, and they're not tired at the end of the day, so they have tons of energy, and they love doing it too. And this environment that we've been trying to build on these Sunday night pond hockey sessions, it just does that. It forces families to meet each other in areas where they never would, because it's free ice, right? And who's not going to take that? And again, in our area, we don't have, like where Tom was during COVID, we don't get all the pond hockey ice. We don't get the opportunity to just go out in the outdoor rink because there just aren't any.
I know that feeling.
Right.
Well, I've got a question here, and Mike, I think you've seen both ends of the spectrum. I'm not sure where Dan is relative to the switch going on or off for the score clock and the importance of winning and getting to the next level. Tom and a friend of Wes are coaching U13 girls teams. They're elite girls teams playing in a boys league, and they're debating now. They're going to expand to 3 maybe and enter a provincial league. So it's becoming a literally unaffordable enterprise. And but the competition seems to move up the ladder and ruin the game for kids because the score clock seems to dominate it. So, are you experiencing that at all in your area, Dan?
Yes. So our leagues are all out of whack right now because everyone's very much chasing letters to sell their program. And so it is like it's a rat race over here to just say, oh, my kid plays on AAA. My kid plays on this. And what that ends up doing is taking kids that aren't at the AAA or AA level and pushing them up there and weakening the level. Everyone's like, oh, I have to have an A team. So they push their kids that shouldn't be at that level into an A program. And it builds up. But what that means is that, AAA is so unaffordable, and AA's slightly less. And then you've got your A level hockey. And we're watching this thing now where we got rid of AAA minor, which is first year. And then so many rinks complained, they brought it back. And then they tried to flood that with teams. And now it's even a challenge for my to find great competition, because I didn't want to force us into double or AAA just for the letter and to charge them all this money when that's not where their skill level is. We're not. My goal this year wasn't to go win every game. It was to develop them as they're entering Pee Wee for the first time, and then to get them ready for what Bantam is going to be. And I set that expectation, but now we're going out and playing games and beating them and winning 10-0. And that's not what I was looking for. I'm not trying to be in first place. I'm trying to be in the mix. But San Diego or Southern California in general made this push to say we need more elite teams, but you've got to put elite in quotes here, because these elite teams here then travel off to Michigan and lose 15-0 because they're only elite in this bubble. And it's to me, that's ruining the sport down here. It's putting an emphasis on, oh, if you come up here and get this letter, you have a better chance of going further, rather than play where you're supposed to play, develop as a player, and then those opportunities will rise when you're older and you make that decision that you want to play.
Yeah, Mike, Wally.
Okay, Mike, go ahead. I'd like you to comment on that because I was thinking of you, and you've worked both ends of the rainbow here. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I've always come full circle a little bit to say I don't think it's diminishing the sport as much as eliminating the sport. Like the best kids still become the best kids. Like the AAA kids, whether everyone's AAA, right? The best kids that are now on all these mixes still, continue to be the best kids. And what's happening though, it's eliminating the sport for so many others. And this whole, growing the game idea or expanding the game or giving the game an opportunity for players that not know, like, listen, I work in the sport of hockey and I couldn't afford the top level program in my town. There's zero way I could do it because I just can't do it. I mean, who has the time? I don't understand how people even get the opportunity to travel to Chicago 5 times in a winter and leave on school and leave on a Wednesday night and come back on a Sunday night. It just, like, to me, it doesn't make sense. And I think the side that we all, that I say us, but the governing bodies really have fallen and failed at is not establishing a set of guidelines that people have to abide by, and then you can go join that league. And if you don't want to join that league, then go do your own thing. But putting all the resources into the programs that benefit the most kids, as opposed to continuing to put money into programming that only benefits the few. And that's just really, and to me, that's really where we in the U.S. I know with the U.S. The way we're structured, that's where it's really hurt the most. I don't see the game growing. I see kids succeeding, but I don't really see the game expanding like soccer or lacrosse or where everyone plays. Like, what kid in the U.S. doesn't play soccer? Every single kid plays soccer at some point. It's because it's not, and it's not just we're manufacturing the costs. Like we're making these costs happen. They don't have to happen.
Peter.
Yeah, Dan, what age levels are those teams popping up at?
So 12U's the first the first year you can be a AAA player is at the 12U level here. So double and AAA start in California, in at least Southern California. I believe it's all of California is the 12U level.
So are there established above beyond that yet? Are there established bantam?
Yeah.
U16 all the way
Yep.
up. And
Yep.
what are they? Lack of a better way to put it, what are they selling the parents? Like what's?
Well, telling the parents, junior hockey, because the USPHL expanded out here, so Junior Reign and the Kings are kind of getting into it, and so out here they're it's more of the college path, which I think is a great path to sell the college path, but really it's becoming this. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't play at that level, and you need to play that level now. Where you talk to former pros or people that play in junior now, and you have so many stories of, oh, I didn't play double or triple until I got to 14, 16U when I really knew I was committed. This is where I wanted to go. The out here is like you need to do that in Pee Wee, otherwise the Bantam team's not going to even bother looking at you, and you have to get your hooks in. Otherwise, it's so that puts a program like mine. Like we don't even offer a AAA program. If you're so good, you're ready for AAA, and we really truly believe that, we'll then send you to a AAA program. But the cost associated, the ice time associated, doesn't make sense for a smaller program like ours, and it doesn't make sense because in Southern California, there's 2 teams that made the cut to continue on to the season, and like they just have to travel all over the country to play because you can't just play each other all the time. And Northern California sells AAA, and Northern California hockey is very lackluster, unfortunately. But then you got the Sharks up there, and they're doing the same thing. They're selling, come to our program, we'll get you on a AAA team. We'll get you on a AAA team. And yeah, I agree with Mike that it isn't just diminishing; it is eliminating. It's raised that barrier so high. I could never afford to get my kid into a AAA program. There's just no way. Like I mean, that's you're probably 10 grand just to begin, plus all the travel.
What has that done for your enrollment in your program? What has that done to your enrollment?
It cuts our legs off at a slight, like as you're entering Bantam. So we all have a few players second year Pee-wee when they have a good season and then they think they have to play at this high level, or at least their parents think they have to, and then they end up going up to Anaheim to play for the Ducks, or up even further to LA to play for the Kings. But it gives us it makes it harder even at that, like, because I spent my summer trying to recruit kids onto my team or hold kids onto my team that thought I need to be playing double A. And you talk to the parents and say, why? And it's because, well, this program, we went and skated with them and they told me if I join that program, I can definitely make their AAA team next year. And so we're always trying to sell ourselves. And we kind of just stuck to our guns and said, I think Mike, we talked about this in the call yesterday, like that question of how do you keep kids that want to leave? Half the time we just don't. If they come to us and say, I need to be a AA player, and then I'm going to go to the Ducks, I don't, and we're just like, okay. We've got kids that I mean, we all have kids on our teams that want to be on our teams, and I'll invest in your development if you want to stick around and you're not chasing an NHL dream at 12. Or your parents aren't chasing your NHL dream at 12, I should say.
Sammy Joe.
Yeah, Dan, I love your mentality. It's so refreshing in hockey to hear that. Two things. One is, I don't know if anybody listened to any of the induction speeches on Monday night, but the majority of the players talked about how they played so many different sports growing up and thanked a lot of the coaches from those other sports. I thought that was really valuable. And from the top down, making people realize that it wasn't all about chasing the NHL dream. So that was one. The other thing, on Tuesday, as part of the induction weekend hosted by the Carnegie Initiative, the GTHL actually hosted a roundtable with all of the major stakeholders in Toronto, people that are running hockey in Toronto. And I'll give the GTHL is the Toronto Boys Hockey, right in the GTHA. And I'll give them a lot of credit. The head of the GTHL felt like his program was broken. Like there's something needs to be done to not only just improve the quality, like the experience for the children, but the price. And really it was all about inclusion and diversity. So around the table were a ton of people running their own programming outside of Hockey Canada, outside of GTHL, such as Hockey Equality, Hockey for Youth, school programs, things like that. And it was amazing to see the difference in the joy of the children from those other programs versus GTHL. And the one thing with the GTHL I didn't realize is that AAA programs are separate from AA programs, which are separate from A programs. So it isn't this sort of hierarchical, you start out at the bottom developing and you move up. It is simply you go and you pay to be a AAA player, or you try out. It doesn't even seem like there's tryouts. Coaches kind of protect kids. And it just seemed like a business for them at that level. It was, I don't know, so much onus put on the parents, a huge price tag. And yet these kids that are playing hockey for $200 a year are finding so much joy in it and, wanting to stay in the game. And it was such a eye-opening experience for what young boys, and there's girls that play in the GTHL too, but what they experience in hockey and why lots of them are done when they're 15 or 16. It was, but I'll give the GTHL a lot of credit. I think they see this and they're really attempting to make changes and to try to figure out how from within to change specifically, hockey culture, the scoreboard, all about the NHL. I mean, just so many different factors that we had the conversation about that day. So it was really fascinating. And it was eye-opening, needless to say. So that's why, Dan, it's refreshing to hear somebody like you that's like, I don't need to keep those kids if they don't want to be here. I think that's the biggest thing that we as coaches have to, and organizations have to remember, that all we can do is, and Bernice Carnegie said this from the platform when she accepted her dad's award. She said, we don't have to change the world. We just have to change some of the people in our world, you know, and I thought that was really poignant, and you just make a difference where you can make a difference. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm in the middle of this with Girls Hockey Calgary. Tom coaches an elite team, and there's another coach of an elite team, and it's girls playing in a boys league. And every boys team we play has at least 3 girls on their teams. And there are lots of boys teams, and many of those girls are going to make the elite team if they join the female program. So there's going to be that elimination factor where the reality of what level you're going to play at, and the more expensive level is advocating travel. They want to keep the teams to 2. And I think they could have 3 teams here, especially if the girls that are involved in boys leagues get into girls leagues. Because as Tom said, they play the game differently. They play with their heads. They think the game. And Tom's teams in particular is passing the puck unbelievably well. So the dilemma, I'm just not sure how to deal with it. But I know in Calgary, with Girls Hockey Calgary, the people that are in place are like-minded to us. And I think keeping the philosophy of why they're doing what they're doing, keeping kids in the game, and keeping that cost factor in mind is really going to be a key thing going down the road. So, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been really, really focused on this mostly in the last probably 4 or 5 years, but more importantly, the last year, of trying to get in the head of understanding why real good hockey people, I mean, real high level people, don't think that you can't run a competitive, developmental, high intensity, high performance environment without having to get on a plane and without having to go seek the same talent you already have in your building. It's so odd to me that the feeling that the only way to go find competition is to go find it instead of developing it like organically and internally is something that is a real, that's the real disconnect, I think, in why the GTHL has become what they've become, and why AAA hockey in the U.S. has become why they become, and why Europe now is going in a direction of trying to formulate, super teams earlier and earlier and earlier in their age group, as opposed to community hockey until you're 16 years old, and then you move into your club pro team. So it's because to me, it seems like it could be done. It happens in other environments. And if I was a coach, or I was a director, if I was somebody who runs a rink, or I wanted to make the most, like if it really came down to money, if I want to make the most money, I would want all the kids I've developed to be in my rink and spend all their money with me. And it's so odd to me that you would give your money to Air Canada and the Hilton and Mobile instead of giving it to me. So I don't know if it's a lack of education or understanding, laziness. I don't know if it's just easier to put your, select 18 kids, put them in a league, Wally, right? And then go, hey, go travel. Or is it hard to say we're gonna put the best 14-year-old girls in a rink, and they're gonna battle and battle and battle, and every practice they come is going to be a competitive, cutthroat, high performance environment, and we can create better athletes without the carnage of all this other stuff that comes along with the over the top travel. And I don't know, it's been very hard for me to kind of break that mold with people, and I frankly don't, and I think my frustration is I don't see how they don't see it.
Well, I believe Dan had mentioned the word rat race is what? And we're just
An echo there, Wally.
I'm not sure. Am I still echoing?
Good.
You're good now.
Okay, Dan had mentioned the rat race, and that's exactly what we get into. You get coaching your team, you're looking at the results, and then you're thinking of, it gets down to the purpose of your coaching, and that keeping your perspective is going to be the root of what you do. That's the most important thing, and that's the way you can win in whatever you do. Once you go to the win at all costs model, eliminating players and creating this false sense of superiority, you've got serious problems at the very top. And Canada is a good example of that, with what Hockey Canada is having to deal with recently. And this has been going on for a long time. It's a culture, the sporting culture is something that has sort of taken its own path, and in some ways done more harm than good. And I think a group like this can just at least talk the walk. We can't get everybody to walk it, but we seem to have an understanding of what could be done, and I believe that we can create the most elite players in the world with a balanced program that's more affordable. There is going to take some acceptance of where kids are at and where they're going to be placed and how they're going to have to be taught and nurtured. That takes coaching expertise and leadership. And there aren't many of those people around. Every organization has a administration that's parent built, driven, and it changes according to the cycle of their players. And they're thinking of the best interest of their players most of the time, relative to being the best players in their leagues. So, Sammy Joe, go ahead.
I think Dan had a question before me. If Dan's hand is up.
Okay.
Oh no, please go first. I have spoken so much today. You please.
Oh, I was just curious for the Americans on the call. I don't know if anybody saw the rivalry series game last night. I was working it for TSN and the NHL Network, but Canada's playing the US again tonight. It is late for those of us on the East Coast, but those of you on the West Coast, is that a good time? And I was curious about John Wroblewski's acumen and his respect within the U.S. So this is the coach of the U.S. team. He coached the U18 team, and he coached the girls at the Olympics. And he tends to play 4 lines equally. So total on ice time is pretty much equal between the 4 lines and all 7D. So I found that fascinating. And anybody that I've talked to that has had kids, like Hughes, both had her kids obviously with him, and then Manon Réaume had her son with him, actually, and has her other son with him. Just absolutely loves his development style and the way that each kid is valued. And I was just kind of curious if that's sort of the feeling in the U.S. about him, or is it, yeah. Anybody have any opinions on him?
I don't know firsthand. So, but I do know, just based off of listening to guys like in the USA hockey system, that one of the reasons that he's chosen for these kind of roles is because of the development side first, and then the winning, like the philosophy that the winning will take care of itself once you develop a core group of players that can, and he, the mindset. But I think he's also very confident, it's also a very confident person, right? Because they're not worrying about, like, when you get into the USHL or you get into some of these other junior programs where you have to win, like you have to find ways to win. And Timmy, you've talked about this, I think, in back in some of the calls too. That your tendency is to go and think you can play your best kids more, but it's actually what's happening is the reverse. Is that you're not enabling your players to play at their best when you need all of them the most. And I think he, you can really see, because I really, I watched that game too, and I love, even, and you could probably see it from a different vantage point, but even the on the bench stuff between the players, like it's very, it's supportive, I guess, is
and communicative, right? It seems like they're asking questions, he's asking questions. That's what it kind of seems like. For everybody else, he was in the program in Michigan before this, so he ran U.S. Men's Development. Is that what it's called there,
Mike?
The
NDTP program, yeah.
And then he was brought over to the women's side to do this. So, yeah, I'm curious what that means, not for a short-term tournament like this, but what that means for the next 10 years for USA Women's Hockey, to have somebody like him who is all about development. And that's not to say the Canadians are not, but just it's overt. It is noticeable that somebody like Hillary Knight and Kendall Coyne-Schofield are not out there that much, but then score 2 goals to win the game for the team at the end. Like it's going to be a fascinating long-term project, I think, for the Americans.
I think, Dan, I think you were up.
And your mic's off.
On that subject, that's the direction we need to go. Like, we need to be rolling lines and getting people on the ice. I can't how many games I've been in where I had a parent come to me after and say, "What was that player doing on the ice in the last 2 minutes?" And I'll say, "Well, that was their turn." What do we gain from that win or loss if they're on the bench? And when we do tournaments, or like when we made the playoffs last year, the only adjustment I made was that I had an all parent and player meeting, and I said, now that we're at a level where we're actually here to win the next game, I'm gonna have a new rule where the last 5 minutes of the game belong to me, and I'm going to, if we're down by a lot, and I don't think we're coming back, hey, I'm gonna roll the kids that I think have really deserved some extra ice. If it's a 1-goal game, I'm gonna roll the kids that I think can hold this game for us or win it for us based on that game. And I don't want it can't be historic. It can't be, oh, you're always my best player, so you're out there. If you're my best player usually, but you're having an off game, I'm giving it to that kid that's trying as hard as he can. And then throughout the season, I tell them I'm rolling lines. And yeah, there's going to be power plays and penalty kills. The power play, I want my next line out there. I don't have a power play line. And for the penalty kill, I'm going to send the next, 2D, the next 2 forwards, and any kid that has to miss a little bit, I'm going to make up for it. We're going to find a way, because they don't develop if they're not playing. And, everything you take from practice, you bring to a game. Well, how can they implement it if you're sitting them the whole time, or if they're only getting half the shifts? And if we can bring that game and that sport to that level where every coach is comfortable with that, well then, yeah, your outcomes might be different and you might not win as many games as you could have. But at the end of the day, what kids' 12A schedule and record is going to come up when they're trying to play college hockey, when they are applying for their first job out of college and not playing hockey anymore? Those don't come up, but those leadership and opportunities do. And we've gotten away from that, because I've played some teams that I can see have 3 full lines, and I play the top 2 lines the entire game. And it's not until they're crushing us that
you would be impressed to have seen. Tom and Wally, I think if you guys go on mute, that might be helpful.
You got an echo.
Yeah, so if you guys go on mute, that should go away. Okay. You would be very impressed with John Robleski, because in 3-on-3, he even had like rookies on the ice next. It was just simply, it looked like it was their turn. And I love that mentality. And you're right, like this is one moment in that person's life, but this is preparing them for the rest of their life. And it's just as important to be able to support the others while they're on the ice as it is to be that person on the ice, right? There's so many great lessons to be learned. So
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the issues is, I mean, unfortunately, some of the decisions that are made in regards to that, unless you have support, are economically driven, like Mike is saying about coach junior levels. You're not winning. Next year, there's somebody else in your seat. So, and even if you go to a rink, like with our youth in general, it's not uncommon for somebody to be talking about, a couple of coaches to be talking about the NHL game they saw the night before or the weekend before. And did you see what did you see what Colorado did on the power play? We got to do that, right? So if you're in a situation like I was forced, like when I was in prep school, it was about character. It was about building. I mean, sure, kids came to play because we were successful and they wanted to use it as a path to college. But, you also had kids that just played because they loved it and they were going to go somewhere to crew or to play lacrosse or whatever the sport may be. So we had the ability to do what you're talking about, develop kids. And we did. We ran, for the most part that I was there, we ran 4 lines and the kids did develop and we had a bunch of kids move on to college, university. But when it's economically driven and you're at that youth level and that is what you're looking at, right? How do you sell that, so to speak? How do you develop that at the youth level that we can do that? Because you go to a AAA game here in the States and you go to a U12 AAA game, and if you're down halfway through the second period, they're already shortening the bench. So how do you teach that mentality? I mean, you can do it probably in a small youth organization because you can talk to those individuals, you can hopefully gain their trust, their confidence, that we can develop you by doing XYZ. But that's a big issue, is when at the top it's being done that way. And same, like, to your point, that's great what he does, but I don't know how many people are aware that he does that. And how do you get them on? I guess how do you get them on board? Really, I guess is the question. So,
Peter, I just want to make a comment on that. You talk about the highest level. The bench management is fairer in the NHL than in minor hockey. The shortening of the bench in minor hockey, if the score is down, and we've talked about this many times, it's criminal. Like the effect on personal belief and self-esteem for the sake of the score clock, entitling these kids who might have better birth dates to play more than others for the sake of an outcome. You don't win on the score clock.
right, Wally, I agree, but that's the insanity of it. Is I'm paying $10,000 for my kid to play on the AAA team, and if he doesn't happen to be a top 6 forward that game, he's not playing, or she's not playing.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I'm saying he's going to be a top 6 player that's going to play every situation. Everybody is. The creation of this hierarchy of first, second, third line, that's the art of coaching. And everybody's got to feel valued. Everybody has to have a role, earn a role, and learn the life skills to be the best they can be at any level. And I tell you what, the living example of how to do it is the NHL. Kids get less ice time playing minor hockey. It's AA and AAA hockey when they're growing up as 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds. So at the elitist level, to me, they manage the bench quite well, and the teams that get the farthest in the playoffs seem to balance their minutes a lot more. There is separation, but they respect their roles. Tim?
Well, thanks, Wally. Yeah, lots to interject. Just on that point directly, and I think we talked about this before, the single biggest difference between the Oilers midseason last year and end of season last year was the reduction of the ice time of McDavid and Draisaitl to create more of a team sort of concept, and they became a better team. And to Peter's point, all we can do is keep hammering home that that is the path to better teams and more successful teams is, as Wally said, finding a role for all the players and distributing the ice time, fairly, maybe not perfectly equally, but more on the Roboleski model, and just let people play. And, to Peter's point, when it's, at higher levels, when you start to feel the pressure, the default reaction by coaches is to play their better players, who they perceive to be their better players, more in those situations. And in too many situations, even when those better players are not particularly performing well in any particular game, instead of taking a team-driven concept where we're doing this together, we're sinking together, we're swimming together, and eventually that is the path to winning. And it's not the other way. We're just, the top 3 or 4 players get to play a ton. All we can do as Sharks and as coaches is try to keep encouraging that mentality. And Sammy's going to be talking it up in the women's league there now. Hey, look at what the national women's team is doing in the U.S. They're rolling 4 lines. Virtually all NHL teams, as Wally pointed out, use all 4 lines to a pretty great extent. And the ones that have success are 4 lines deep. And there's still a big difference between the top players and the bottom players on any team. But that's the path to real success, both in terms of wins and losses and in terms of all the players feeling their own self-worth and having a role on the teams. I sort of wanted to go back just one step and add on to what Dan was saying about changing his basic roll the lines philosophy, maybe at the end of the year when there's a bit more on the line and they're really trying to win those playoff games. If Carla McLeod was on, she would be adding that when she was at the Ed School in Calgary here, she used the exact same philosophy: roll the lines, let everybody experience and play all through the year. But then, instead of having a meeting to tell them what she was going to do going into the playoffs, she had a meeting and asked the players what they wanted to do. Did they want to keep just rolling lines and putting everybody out? Or did they want to give her permission to do what Dan does? Like for the last 5-7 minutes of a period or the last half of the third period, do you want me to try to pick out who's playing the best in that moment and play them a bit more? Or do you want to just roll lines? And her teams always gave her permission to pick the best players in those critical situations and give them a bit more ice time. So by empowering the players, allowing them to make that decision, and you could probably include the parents in a meeting like that, hey, then everybody's on board and there's no complaints. So I just wanted to add that.
I just wanted to say I'm stealing that immediately and doing that this year if we make the playoffs. I love that idea.
I'll pass that on to Carla. She'll be very happy.
Peter.
Yeah, I love the idea. Just jump on what Tim just said there. And players know, like players know who they want to rely on in a certain situation, and giving them that ownership is just fantastic. I love that idea. But I had a question for Mike. So Mike, because you're around the AAA probably as much or more than anyone in, at least I think in Connecticut, you got your thumb on that pulse there. Do you feel like, would it be a sales tool for a AAA organization to say, listen, we bring in good players, and the players we bring in, we trust, and everybody plays. We roll 4 lines. Would that be perceived as, yeah, I want my kid to play there? Or will that be perceived as those people aren't serious?
Well, if you win, then they come. It's hard, right? You got it's so if you can manipulate that somehow, and I've done this with actually a lot of teams where, not that I want to win the league, but if I could position the kids in the right places to play the right games against the right people, then I can manufacture like that we're winning, even though because the parents don't care if the level's lower. They don't know. They just like, oh, we're winning. Look, we won 5 games. Like the worst weekends I could have in a new team is winning in the weekend series the first weekend. Oh my gosh, now we're screwed. Because everybody's like, oh, this team's gonna go. This team's going places. But I think it's just a matter of. But I do agree. One of the philosophical pieces in there is, and then there is a team up in upstate Connecticut actually that's doing that, where they say, listen, we've selected you, and Dan could chime in later, but one of the things he does, and one of the guys, Sam Chima, who we had on my call yesterday with the coaches site guys with the directors club, talking about being on a team, saying I'm the head coach of the team and I'm going to be with your team for 5 years. Like it was unbelievable. Like like I'm choosing you, and I'm choosing, and if I'm a good enough coach to choose you to play for me, that I'm also a good enough coach to continue to develop you, and I want to keep you. And I think that's a different mindset, and it really goes more into like college hockey, prep school hockey, and pro hockey, where now you have a player and you get to know that player over the course of 3, 4, 5 years, and you're developing that player. And you can use all of these different skills that we're all learning in these kind of situations, as opposed to, you have a kid for 6 months, you can't wait to cut them, and now you're dealing with a whole new group of kids for the next 6 months, and you have to get to. Dan said it yesterday, like you got to get to know them. They have to get to know you. You're starting the process. The way our system's set up is you're continuing to always change, restart and end the process, and it's so hard to build these relationships. But I think there is a marketing ploy in there to say, not only are we playing you, you're all going to play. We know ahead of time we're going to play to the point where at the end of the year, the kids, the players, the ones that are competing are the ones that are going to start to dictate what the playing time is based off of where they think their peers are. And I think to me, that's brilliant, but I think it's just another way to empower the players within the organization to take ownership in their own development as well.
I just wanted to interject too, like on Peter's point. Peter, you said just before that, the players know who they want to rely on in the critical moments in the game. I think that's true, but the players also know who's working their butt off and who deserves some extra time at critical points in the game. Like if Leon Draisaitl is, and maybe that's maybe not a good example, but if one of the better players is just having a bad day or is not working hard enough, the players know that. All the players know that. And maybe that player doesn't deserve to be one of those players with extra ice time at the end of the game. That was one thing. And then when you asked the question of Mike about, could a fully developmental model be a marketing tool, and could it be used successfully? If Gino Cavallini were on the call with us today, he runs a Chicago Mission, that's what they do. They market themselves as, hey, if we take you, we're going to develop you and we're going to play you. You're not sitting on the bench. And they use their bench to the fullest extent, and their success speaks for itself. They're a terrific organization, and so it can be a successful marketing tool, of course. Like Mike says, you have to have some success, but if you get good players and you've got a good balanced team, you will have success if you have that kind of philosophy. I believe, and I think we all believe.
I'd like to just make a point related to this. I wish Kerry Brackle was on, because the under 18 midget AAA level, which is the highest level in Calgary, The coaches picked the team, and from the get-go, they designated the first two lines who were the skilled lines that would play power play. The third line was going to be the compete line, and the fourth line was the energy line. So they labeled these players based on perceived talent, skill. The players, they didn't earn their roles. They were given those roles and slotted into those roles during games, and they didn't play with intensity and compete. They took bad penalties. They played selfishly. The players know what's going on. The coaches are not consistent in being able to deal with that. But when you pick your team from the get-go and label this player or these players and the others are here, they know that something's amiss. And I don't know how you deal with that. To me, when you hire a coach, there has to be an interview process where the right questions are asked and the right answers need to be given. And that's not the case. Anybody else got anything to add to that?
Well, I think talking about building that development model and how do you sell
Oh, you
that,
got to go.
you got to go. You got to go up. Oh, can you hear me?
Just barely, Dan.
Uh-oh, okay.
There you go.
There you go. All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Is that better? Okay, here, I'll turn this off so you don't have to look at me awkwardly while I talk into the mic. I would say like even our program is still struggling through that process of changing that mentality where it is, hey, come in now and you're going to be with us for the long term over development. But I would say while our program is still getting there, a lot of our coaches are still building that reputation. That's sort of where I started. I came in and said, I'm taking these 11s when they were 8U, and I'm going to stick with you. And on my team of 15, I probably have 5 kids that are from that 8U team still with me. Now, some of that's just turnover. Kids leave the sport. I've had multiple parents move. We're a big military town, so suddenly you get deployed somewhere else and you're gone. But then we bring in the new kids, and through those years, I've only added in 4 to 5 new kids as we roll through because I have such little turnover. But I had to build that trust, number one, that the winning would come with the development. That I'm never going to put an emphasis on win at all costs, but that I truly believe that we're picking the right kids that will stick around long term, and you're going to see winning become just a part of how they play. And that's the success we found. And now when we don't win, if we have a string of bad games, no one's panicking anymore because they've seen the history of what we can do in there. And they understand that, hey, we can't win them all, but we can take the good from it. And I have to meet with parents regularly who, maybe after a loss, they're like, oh, what happened there? And I'm like, they're 12 years old and they just didn't have their best game. Or, hey, we finally found a team that's way better than us. And now we know what we have to work towards. But you've got to build that trust early, and that takes time. So to really get this refresh of changing that win at all cost mentality and bring it into a development model, it just takes coaches willing to risk it. Like, I could have lost a lot of games last season and had every single player take off for another program. But instead, we did fairly well. And the ones that even started thinking, oh, maybe I could go to this AA team, stuck around because they believed in the long-term plan. But you've got to sell it, but you've also got to really believe it and practice it. And so if I told them I was all about development and then only ran 2 lines, I've got one whole line of families that are leaving because I lied to them.
Go ahead, Peter.
Okay, so I'm going to set the table here for Mike Benelli. So what we're talking about here, and I mean, I think it could be a great model that coach sticking with. But part of the issue now is the difference in the ages with the teams, right? So is that model easier if organizations, and what's the thought process on going to major minor? Because then it's seamless how you move through. And that being said, what about the minor player, the Pee Wee minor player that could play skill wise on the major team? So I'll just throw that out.
Yeah, so it's funny because I think that's going to be our next show is major minor year of birth teams. But so what I found, and I've done this now for about 20 years, doing that exact setup. Like you come in, we're picking as year of birth, but knowing how kids develop, and we know this is going to happen. What happens is I could take a group of 8-year-olds and give them the greatest development structure in the world. But what happens is the kids that will develop quicker and faster do. And, and they say, well, we've developed outside of your development program because the other kids aren't keeping up. Now, me in the position I'm in would say, well, it's going to come around. Like, I firmly believe that these other kids are going to come back into this loop if we continue to stay on this path. But it's so hard for a parent to trust that, is to say, well, you want me to intentionally hold my kid back from going to a AAA program to wait for the other kids to catch up to me, and it's very, very difficult unless you could have find a family of a bunch of find 3 families that have 4 kids each. And I think that's where that's the only way to do it, is that the people don't have the patience and the belief and the will to wait for the development to come back around. And then that's how you grow programming. That's why community programming in most, a lot of parts of Canada and Minnesota and, Michigan, they can do it because the community is they're in the community. They have nowhere else to go. They're bottlenecked. So they could be the best kid on their team at 8 and at 9, and all of a sudden the other kid catches up and now they're not best kid. And then at 12, maybe they are the best kid again. And we don't get to see that in the system we're in now because the best kids leave. And then we think the outlier is the kid at 15 that all of a sudden makes his high school team where he's never been on a AAA team before. I'm like, that's not the outlier. That's the norm. But we don't get to see it because kids separate so early in their hockey development life. But again, in a utopia society of hockey, I would say I'm going to take 16 kids from my community. We're going to put them in this high performance development setting. You will 5 or 6 kids are going to progress. I've seen it in lacrosse. So I actually ran this exact scenario in our youth lacrosse program in town. I took every kindergartner in my son's grade. There was no coach. I took it over. I ran a hockey program through lacrosse, all station based, all development, all battle drills, all skill development stuff. Played every single kid in every single position. And right now, they're all 15 years old. 95% of those kids are still playing, and they're the better kids in their programs. But that's only because they weren't really crazy lacrosse people. They were just like, I don't know, we're just playing lacrosse to have fun. This is just a recreational thing for us in town. But when you get to a place where you think your kid has to progress, the part of the parent says, they're too good for your program right now. I have to extract them. And my answer is, well, the reason they're this good is because of the program we're running. So don't extract them. So it's a whole, again, it's a sales job, but it's and again, that goes back to my initial conversation. Is like, I don't understand how people don't understand.
Ray, I'm going to get you introduce yourself. It's been a while. I'm pretty sure everybody may know you. Peter, have you met Ray before?
I have, yes.
Okay.
I've had the pleasure.
And Ray, before I introduce you, I want to welcome you and thank you for involving me going to the University of Ottawa and working with the men's and women's coaches and their program there, because exactly what we've been talking about, I experienced. On the one side, the one coach had a player that was so-called elite that got more ice time than many others. And on the male side, It was a brand new team that had been suspended. He recruited junior A leaders and they rolled the lines. And their outcomes were the best they've ever been doing that. So Ray, please introduce yourself to Dan and the group here, and then go ahead with whatever it is you got on your mind. Your speaker, Ray. Got to get your speaker going, Ray. Can't hear you, Ray. There we go. Go ahead. Still no speaker.
Oh, yeah, we can't hear you, Ray. It says your speaker is off, but the computer might know you have nothing valuable to add and just wants to mute you, but
Censored by the computer. Have we come to that?
yeah, there you go. Oh, that was Peter, sorry.
You want to reboot it, Ray? Reboot your computer?
I just turned Skype off and join again, yeah. That often works.
Computer's not named Hal, is it?
Yeah.
I'm phoning Ray and I'm going to see if my cell speaker will be able to pick it up.
Now
I
we
don't think it's going to work. Hi, Ray. I've got you on my cell phone so we can hear you.
Can you hear me off the phone?
Yes, I can. Go ahead, Ray.
I'm a peak performance coach.
yeah, we're getting feedback now. Maybe turn your mic off. I don't know, something weird's going on, but
Yeah, Wally, maybe you mute. If you mute.
Okay.
Let's try that
Right. Yeah, try it now, Ray. I guess we need Wally because we can't hear Wally's phone now. So what a bunch of tech wizards we are.
Where's Sammy Joe?
Yeah.
Oh, Wally's on. Oh, he called from his phone. I thought he called from Skype.
Yeah. Hey, Ray, why don't you just shut your Skype down and just join us again? That often works. If
Yes, you're right.
Okay. Shut your Skype down and come on back in, Ray. I wonder how many years generations of coaches and parents and players have gone through the same conversation that we have. Tom, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Like, of all the guys I've worked with, you seem to manage your bench. Everybody feels valued, plays a role, and you've gotten good results. But that doesn't mean you necessarily kept your job.
No,
So-
you don't always. I mean, there's so
Nope.
many variables.
Yeah. But the
COVID
art,
damaged us so much, I lost all my players.
yeah.
No.
With COVID, that definitely was a factor. Yeah.
But oh no, we usually do really well, and the players usually have a good time, and you know, and it's really fun coaching with Jim and Cassie because they have the same philosophy. And last night they ran the whole practice because the practice before, Cassie was in Toronto doing that Monday night hockey, and Jim went to the Flames game. So I ran the whole practice full ice with the other team, and we had a really good session. But you know, if everybody play, you're only as good as your weakest player. So why would I go to practice? This is my philosophy. Why would I go to practice if I'm not going to get to play in the game? Why would I be the hardest working player in practice if I'm not going to get to play in the game? hardly ever. And that's kind of been my mantra is everybody, maybe at the end of the game, you do go with, the players that are having the best game, but they're not necessarily the same players all the time. But, like with this girls team, we just roll them no matter what the situation is. But, when I'm getting paid to coach, it's pretty important to win too. So end up doing that near the end.
Okay, Ray, you're back on. Let's see if your speaker is working.
I've changed computers, so I think that this time it should work.
You're good.
Good.
You're on. Go ahead, Ray.
I was going to say, when I started, I'm a peak performance coach, and I've worked as a coach in the minors, and I've coached athletes all the way from minors to pros. And as Wally knows, I coach coaches. So the whole gamut. And I was listening to the exchange, and one of the things that I think, like big picture, is there's a conflict between winning and developing. And I have seen it big time, all the way up to varsity. NHL is different because coaches are paid, players are paid, and I can name like Jacques Martin and Pierre Pagé in Quebec and Terrien in Montreal, and I've listened to those people. And going back to the minors, I think that, and because I've worked with minor hockey associations, because they had big problems with parents and with this, like shortening the bench and not playing players and stuff like that. And I'm offering this reflection. It's like, it's not today, it's tomorrow, because the mindset of coaches and parents, we have to educate to change the mindset. And from what I have observed over, like we're talking about, when I coached, I started working, I was 25 years. So that's 50 years away. And I coached minor hockey, and I was an assistant. And the coach used to it was worse than shortening his bench. There was one player that was like outstanding, heads and shoulders above everybody else. And he played him like all the time. And, I was an assistant. I didn't know much about coaching, but I observed stuff. And what I'm thinking is that as I've heard Wally, and I just heard Dan, I think, and other people talking about what works is that before the season starts, you have to get the whole group together and develop a philosophy. Like if you're not going to shorten the bench, if you're going to play the four lines and all that kind of stuff, it's got to be established right off the bat so that people don't have false expectations, because there will be games when, like the only way you're going to win is shortening the bench. But in the short run, that hurts you. In the long run, it helps tremendously, because I have been part of teams that have not respected that shortening the bench or, like playing the top guys or whatever, and won championships. So I'm a believer that if you play everybody right from the start, and that's always the philosophy that you apply throughout the season, and you remind the parents and you remind the kids, like it's about fun. It's not about winning. It's about having fun playing the sport you love. And in the long run, you do get the results. And I'm sure that you have lived it. And this business about the players knowing, it's so true, because I have seen it, been part of it, listening to the discourse of, when we get to the last 5 minutes and let's say we're down by a goal, everybody kind of just says, yeah, play the top people so that maybe we can get that goal. If we get it, great. If we don't get it, hey, we played a great game, and when the time was appropriate, we changed things so that we increased the potential. But everybody got their opportunity to contribute. Reflecting on what Wally brought up, this business of labeling players, I say many years, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, if you remember Wally, with Yannick, we went away from this business of line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. We went away from all labels, and it was a positive impact on the team, because then it's the old business, like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you say this person is a certain role, then that's what they limit their ability to. It's unfortunate, but that's the way human beings are. But if you say, whenever you go on the ice, you give your best shot, there's some days that, and I saw it, and Wally experienced it here when he was here, where the best player was not the best player. If you remember, Wally, I remember a game when that top person got 3 penalties because she just wasn't there. And, she was not the person to be put into the situation. I think that in the long run, you gain so much by having a philosophy that you apply in a uniform, consistent, and repeatable way. And everybody, like assist coaches, players, parents, because we can't be mistaken. Like I dealt with parents at the varsity level too. Not directly with the parents, but with the athlete being overwhelmed and all screwed up because of what was happening with their parents. So my belief is that you can get at what you're all aiming for by setting the tone at the beginning of the year, and let's face it, not changing mid-course. Because if you do that, then you lose your credibility.
Your mic, Wally.
Yeah.
The consistency of walking the talk is the problem. Yeah, if you have that meeting, and most don't, but if you have that meeting and clearly outline how you're going to operate with the development model, and then you change your thinking, you have problems. So Dan, you said it. It's all about trust. And I don't care if it's business, leadership, ownership, parenting. Trust is the key word. And if you don't know what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're going to do it, you're going to have a difficult time earning trust and gaining respect. Because right now, players don't trust coaches, don't respect coaches, and it's not the fault of their own. They're out in the middle of an ocean and with a ship without a rudder. They don't know what direction they're going. They don't know why they're coaching. And they don't know how to coach to get the most out of a team. They're coaching the way they've been coached. And so it's fairly simple, but yet it isn't. Because the outcomes, the score clock, overrule reason. The process is forgotten about, the development process. And you may not win every game, but you'll certainly be more successful. I think the definition of winning is the key to it all. Being the best you can be. And that means not taking bad penalties, selfish penalties, not staying out too long, and back checking hard. Good behaviors, life skill behaviors. And I think that understanding that's why you're coaching. It's got nothing to do with score clock. What they're learning from playing that game, and you know what their kids are learning? How not to lead, how not to coach. That's the reality of it. They're talking about the stuff that's going on and they can't understand it. So I think we have to keep up with the young generations. It's right, it's intelligent, it's technologically connected, far ahead of us in the learning curve of where they're going. And I think we've got so much to do yet to catch up to them. So,
and involve them in how you're going to do it.
Yeah, and I think Carla said it right. She got permission. She got permission from them to manage the bench in the playoffs. The players made that decision. It was their decision. It wasn't hers. It was theirs. And I think that Dan has taken that point away for his teams, is permission to do that. That's going to gain respect. You're walking the talk. You're doing what you say. You're following through on it. You're respecting them by listening to them. And they're going to trust you. They're going to believe in you. More importantly, they're going to believe in themselves. Well, I'm not sure, Dan, but I'm sure glad you got on today because you fit the mold of the group pretty well. It's quite a cross section of people, and I really don't know what else to say, Mike. But you seem to be doing this in a regular time, this kind of thing with your coaches club and the coaches site, and discussing these kind of topics. And I think the mission is to try to make a bigger difference in affecting the way the game is played. And we're all in our silos, in our areas, and we just try to do the best that we can and make a difference. And that's all you can do.
Wally, I've been trying to raise my hand, but I'm having
You
a
got
heck of a time getting it to happen. I just, on my ice hockey coaching YouTube Pro on the Facebook, I just posted 3 things that we did last night. Cassie and Jim both did a game, and then Cassie did a drill with them passing 3 pucks at once. And I don't know, it's worth a look because of their the way they, I don't know, just their rapport with the players, I think, is just so good. And then also letting the game teach the game. So I just wanted to mention that.
Can you add that to the chat?
I don't know. I can try.
I think it's just cut and paste, Tom, but send
Yeah.
it.
Well, yeah, I did that
Send it
on the
to
computer,
me.
and this is my phone. I'll try it. I'll try to go to there on my phone.
Dan, if you can send me an email at Wally Kozak, WALLYKOZAK at gmail.com. I'll add you to the Sharks email list. And when Tom does share his resources, they're exceptional, Dan. There's a library of things to do at every level, a simple approach that is a developmental model, and absolutely fun. And it's something that is worth sharing.
Awesome. I'll send you an email shortly.
Okay. Ray, go ahead, Ray.
I'm going to sing the same song that I sang right from the start. I listened to all of you, and it's great stuff. My reflection is somehow we don't have to. We want to expand the reach of this knowledge, this philosophy that you're all espousing, that makes a big difference. We must find a way to share that in a wider spectrum and field of users.
I agree with you, but I don't mind being negative, but it's impossible because we have time. We're full-time employees or retired to ponder, to think, to share ideas, and the people in the trenches are too busy. They're caught up in the rat race. That's the reality. And how they make decisions. They administrate hockey organizations, and they all have good intentions. And I think that the ability to make change is very difficult. It requires leadership from the top down and the bottom up and the inside out. And I think I just enjoy to come on and talk to people who are like-minded. It makes me appreciate that, okay, there's some people that understand the right way, that walk the talk, and I just wish I could make a bigger difference, but I've sort of run the gauntlet of trying to do this, and this is the last kick at the cat for me, trying to get the word out and get the word around. So just hopefully we get more young people on. Like I think Mike might be the youngest here that are doing that are getting it, and the coaches' side is getting it. But all we can do is keep trying to make a difference.
I'm kind of looking at this the same way I'm looking at what's happening. Like I'm being asked by the University of Ottawa to help her mountain effort to reinvent the sports department. And like the same thing happens in organizational development where I do work too, and I'm working on a project right now in Pittsburgh. We want to involve or interest people that can speak on behalf of this good way of doing things for the good of the game. And, like I'm thinking of Eli Wickenheiser, I'm thinking of Wayne Gretzky, I'm thinking of even Sidney Crosby, who's still playing. Those are people that somehow we want to interest into what is going on and what's being said so that they can be supporters of an effort to go to an entity like Hockey Canada, which shouldn't be Hockey Canada, it should be something else so that it changes, the paradigm is changed, so that they take on, like obviously us sitting here, it's never going to go very far. We want to involve people that can make a difference. And that's the challenge, is finding that channel to get in to those places.
Well, Ray, Haley is going to be in town on the 25th of November. There's a promotional showing at the Plaza Theater of her documentary, a movie about her life.
Okay.
And hopefully I get to run into her and spend some time with her. But she is the sort of the most high-profile person that responds immediately to texts and emails. So, and she's a good contact with her role with the Leafs. And, she's one that understands the idea of what we're doing and appreciates it. So I'll keep talking to her and keep plugging away.
Did I mention Chris Pronger to you?
I saw him last night on TV, but
Because
Yeah.
I don't know Chris Pronger, but I've watched his career, and I know what he's up to right now. And he may be a very, how should I say, effective and productive ally in doing this. Because one of the things that, like his focus is on NHL players. But how do they get to the NHL? They go through the development journey, just like all players do. And I think that the end product of those that require significant help at the pro level, the product,
you might have to touch yourself.
Yeah, did it again. That's that dial-up service out there.
Well, Tim, we sort of run the gauntlet here in our usual diatribes. I'm just curious if anybody else has got any thoughts. And I don't know if Jordan is in his office or out in the playing field or in the gym, but I'd sure like to hear if anybody's got any other ideas of how to keep pushing forward with this idea of how we can promote it. I think it's who you know, Ray, and who you get to talk to. And I've phoned people in executive positions in lots of organizations, and they're too busy to listen. And that's not being rude. That's the reality. We don't listen well. We do for 2 hours we talk and we listen. That's all we've got time to do. And they're caught up in the rat race. Dan referred to it. And just don't take time to breathe and think about what they're doing and why they're doing it.
we have to find a way to meet them where they are, Wally. That's what we have. We have to get creative on where we catch up with them, so that they don't use that excuse of no time.
How can you meet them where they are?
Well, that's what we have to define through brainstorming. And I'm sure that if we sat down and thought about a strategy, like I know people that are connected. So somehow if we develop a strategy where, like we have somebody like Haley supporting the effort. We have somebody like Sidney Crosby supporting the effort. We have somebody like Chris Pronger supporting the effort. They will listen. I'll bet you they will listen.
Well, there's only one person who might be able to initiate those contacts and create that kind of a conversation, possibly with us as a group initially, and editing that and using it. But yeah, there are people that, I don't know if you mentioned Gretzky, that would be certainly say the right things.
I don't know. I never met him. I've listened to him a lot. I watched him. I lived in Edmonton for 8 years and I watched him play. And I sensed that could be like, for him, a legacy. He would be very interested in doing something like that because it would leave a legacy.
Yeah.
Not money, but a way of doing that, like, I can't help but use your words, for the good of the game.
Yeah.
Because, Wayne Gretzky, his life was hockey.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm going to kind of search the field on how to get to him. I'd like to meet him face to face and talk to him about this. If I get in front of him, I know he's going to get on. I'm telling you.
Well, I know that Haley can set up a meeting or have a conversation with him, and I'm not sure how that would go, but I think we've got something to work on moving forward here.
I'm not worried about how it would go. I think that we have to find the words that help him put some 15-minute aside to have a face-to-face discussion. And as far as I'm concerned, that will be the kicker.
Yeah, Ray, if you're familiar with Chris Pronger, as you mentioned, he could be a lever too to get in front of Mr. Gretzky.
That's my next move. I want to get in touch with him. I know how to get in touch with him and talk to him about what you guys are about and how you see that development in early years can lead to some massive transformation when they come to the pro level. And I know that would resonate with him because that's his big concern. I heard him in an interview and he said, I was in the NHL for 21 years and, like he's been awarded and all that kind of stuff. And he says, it's not everybody that gets the privilege that I've had. And he said, I see too much negative stuff about hockey players because he knows the field and he wants to do something about it. So I'm an optimist, and it's the old business, the right moment, the right words, and the right context. And that's what I'm talking about when I say we have to get creative to create this moment where we have people like Gretzky, like Haley, like, even Sidney Crosby, I'm ready to go after him to buy into this concept that the organizations, and I'm talking about the top organizations that oversee hockey in Canada or the US, influence and act in a way that coaches and parents and players get on board on this aligned on purpose thing, for the good of the game.
The organizations have overlooked. They've overlooked the purpose of it.
Why is that, Wally?
Well, I think it's the rat race. It's quite simple. It's
money.
Yeah. Well,
money.
Hey, we all work for a living. We have to make ends meet, and it's nice.
Oh, but, like sponsors.
That's the reality, And
sponsors are the key. Yeah. And up to now, organizations have not used that, how should I say, that vision to interest sponsors. You and I, we don't have the money, but sponsors put together can make a big difference. And that's the end goal, is to get people that are listened to, that have visibility, that have credibility, to speak the language that I hear you guys talking, so that they, like I used to work for a big multinational, and I've seen them sponsor all kinds of stuff. And then I've seen them withdraw their sponsorship because philosophy, because whatever. And the fact of the matter is that if we presented a philosophy based on the concepts and the principles that you're talking about, sponsors would be really interested, because it's, let's face it, sports is a channel to develop the future of society. There's no two ways about it. And you know that better than I do, because you're deeply involved with it, like almost every day. What kids learn through sports is priceless. if it's done right, of course.
They will survive in spite of us.
Well, hopefully, Wally, if I'm assuming after talking to Kinger that he did apply for the Hockey Canada board. I hope he did.
Yeah.
But assuming he did, and hopefully he and my friend Jim Lawson get elected to be board members. It'll be a great couple of years for us to maybe make some progress sort of in this coaching philosophy area. Because if they can lead it from that position with the help, as Ray mentioned, if they can get Gretz on board and Sid on board and Haley and maybe somebody like Hillary Knight on the U.S. side, I think we'd be away to the races. It's still going to take a generation to change the whole attitude, but you got to start somewhere. So fingers crossed that Dave did apply, and fingers crossed he and Jim get on the board, and it would be great. And Ray, have you ever met Jim Lawson? He was your mic's off. He was the CEO of the CFL for 7 years until a couple of years ago, and he's a part owner with the Tiger Cats right now.
Yeah, but I have not met him face to face. I know
Okay.
Bob Young. I know Bob Young, who is one of the owners.
Yeah. So anyway, so Jim's he's probably the oldest, not the oldest age-wise, but the longest term friend I have. I've known him since I was 10 years old, and he's applied for the board at Hockey Canada, and he'd be fabulous because he's a hockey guy, but he's not a hockey guy. So
Have you talked to him about this stuff?
oh yeah, he's aware of sort of what we do, and
Because
not intimately, but he's aware of what we do.
we can send him on a mission, you see, like give him a reason, like a very specific reason. In marketing, they call it niche. And if Lawson or Jim, is it?
Jim, yeah.
Kind of took that as his niche argument for being on the board. And then he spreads it, like that would kind of enhance his support, his opportunity to be a member.
Yeah, and as I've said before, and everybody on the call has heard me say before, the time is right for sort of a ground shift in coaching philosophy. It's not a hockey problem; it's a societal problem, and Hockey Canada can be the driver of like the whole mission statement thing, the whole developmental approach by coaches at the minor level. It's, the time is right for that kind of change. And so hopefully, again, fingers crossed, both Jim and Dave get on the board and they can take this ball and run with it. It would be terrific.
I was going to mention, oh, sorry, Ray, go ahead.
I was just going to mention to Wally, next, well, I'm going to look for an opportunity to get Larry Ring on the call. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, and you can leave this off. I don't need this out and recorded, but if you or replayed later on. But I am working with. So I met with Mark Messier's team down here a couple of weeks ago. We're meeting again, and I think this fits right into this same idea about what you control and what you can't control. So they're trying to build a 6-rink complex down here in the Bronx, which is bonkers. It's like a $74 million deal. But they all think they could build 6 rinks in one armory in the Bronx, and somehow this is going to grow the sport. So one of the proposals I've given back, and it's gotten a little bit of traction, is that now say, forget about the 6 rinks in the armory. Why don't we build 8 rinks so where I am in Fairfield County, Westchester County, New York, you could literally build 8 rinks within probably, I would say, the most like a half hour from each other. And I told them, it was kind of tongue in cheek, but basically every single kid that comes into the learn to play could wear number 11. Doesn't matter. It would be like the Mark Messier then all of the programming could be developed the way you want in your philosophy, and anybody that comes into that rink would develop through that philosophy, and you could control it, because when the kids travel, they only travel to another Marc Messier rink. And I think this is really where that change can happen, is when you have influencers like that get behind a project. And again, I look at it like, I look at $74 million and I choke, but they don't, right? They're like, no, that's really not a lot of money for infrastructure project. But I think it's the same idea, Ray, is that getting the influencers, the people like, Marc Messier is not putting any money up. I can guarantee you that. It's his name is what draws the investors into saying, we want to be a part of this change. And to Tim's point, I do think there is a change. I think there's certain families that are just fed up, and like, I just want my son and daughter to be able to go to the rink, enjoy this great sport that I love. I still want to be able to go skiing. I still want them to be able to play basketball. I still would like them to actually go to school. And the end game is not the NHL. The end game is being active and just, really enjoying something and having passion, because we're seeing our kids lose more and more passion because there's only the extreme play or no play. And I think this kind of a project, or this kind of a vision, can really fill the gap. And like I've said to them, where I am, like in the Bronx, Westchester, Fairfield County, you do that, and you have more kids in the Bronx than all of Minnesota, than the whole state. So I think it's just a matter of, what can you do to, thanks, Dan. What can you do to grow it, but you control it, and then organically, get to a point where people really can then see that difference, because, they're living it. I don't know. Just a thought, and again, just more in the lines of what you're saying, Ray, and the division for Hockey Canada, having somehow getting in there and building an alternate track, and then seeing which one wins.
I will say this
on that same, sorry.
I was going to say that project is exactly what we need to shift, because in my experience, what works is pilot projects, and this could be a pilot project. And that would prove the concept, because anything that goes on in there is according to, like you said, the philosophy. And, it's about fun in the game. It's about playing the game you love. And it's about everybody kind of having their share.
Right.
I've got a kind of project I'd like to see happen. Is Calgary had the Big Four building, was the biggest curling rink in the world. There's 2 floors with 24 sheets on each floor.
Wow.
Well, they don't curl there anymore. And they don't know what to do with the building, because they're building all these. It's on the Stampede grounds by the Saddle Dome. They don't know what to do with it. And the word is they're probably going to rip it down. But the pipes are still in the ground. I went and I measured and everything last Stampede week. The pipes are still in the ground. They could build, and the pillars are far enough apart, with 24 on each. They could build like 6 small rinks on each floor that you could do U10, and it's a perfect size for about U10, and just play and have all these rinks, and the kids could get on the ice, and basically the infrastructure is there. They just have to put another compressor in, and and I would guess that they sealed everything off when they stopped using them. But that's the kind of thing I'd like to see done.
Yeah. Yep.
Go for it.
I got to run. I got to go kill some birds. But I'm gonna
Mike,
be late.
before you go, Mike, I've got one thing I want you to do, Mike. Who is the coach of the female U.S. team that Sammy was talking about?
Oh, geez.
Romalewski.
Yeah.
Because Tim, related to the names we're dropping in the States, he appears to be a guy who walks the talk at a high level of coaching. And I don't know if anybody knows him well enough to get him to come on about his philosophy, but we need contacts. We have Canadian boys contact, but we need American contacts.
Yeah, I can get it. I'll get a hold of him today while I'll introduce you to him. I can do that. That's easy.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
not
just-
today because
Yeah.
he's probably pretty
Well,
busy tonight.
But I think he would be a good person to have on.
Yeah.
And with Sammy Joe would come on and he could talk about how he does and why he does it. And we could promote the hell out of that philosophy relative to the good of the game.
Oh, I like it. I think he'd be 100% on board. Let me call it and that's something like Roger Gorillo. He can influence that kind of stuff too. So.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Very good
Gotta
idea.
go,
Take care.
You guys, take care. Good to see
Okay.
you. Stay warm, eh? I'm gonna have no problems.
We will.
We shall overcome.
Yeah.
Peter, what's on your agenda today?
Really exciting stuff, Wally. I've got a dump run to go on, which is good. Keep the wood stove going, and still cleaning up my yard. Still a little bit of yard work and furniture put away, that outdoor furniture put away, that kind of thing. How about yourself?
I'm getting ready for my daughter's birthday on Saturday. I'm putting a video together, a memory video of her when her first child was born and going up the ladder of her life. So
That's
I'm
nice.
busy with that. Tom, where do you practice tonight?
Oh, we don't tonight. We play tomorrow night.
Okay. Like
So
I
our
have
next
to
two
throw-
games are against two teams that have been clobbering everybody. So that's going to be interesting.
Well, I may come to one of them for sure. I just find I'm watching this young girls team with these people coaching them, and they're in the middle of a flu season here, so they're very short-handed, bringing call-ups. But I find I enjoy watching that as much as I do watching a Flames game.
Yeah, I've got 2 games coming up this Friday and Saturday because I do the color commentary for on that Northeast 10 network that our men's post games now are broadcast on.
Yeah.
Keep myself around it a little bit, so I've got that coming up too.
Good for you. Good for
Yeah.
I
you.
guess there's 3 different bugs going around in the schools, the COVID, a flu, and some other thing. And I know the other team, they had 7 skaters the other day.
Yeah.
We had 11. And last night, it was an unusual practice last night. It was an hour and a half, but nobody told me this. We had a full ice first half hour and then combined, and then they had the last half hour. So we adapted as it went. But it looked like they just had about 8 skaters, and I think we had about a dozen.
Yeah, we had that here about a month or so ago, and I know a couple of weeks ago when I was talking to a friend of mine up in Quebec, he was telling me about one of the schools up there, one of the prep schools up there. They had 80 cases of flu, so they just essentially told all the kids, just stay in your room, shut it down for a few days, get you your meals and that, but see what they could do about it.
Yeah, last year with everybody washing their hands, wearing masks, there was no flu.
Yep,
But
100%.
maybe that made it really stronger or something. I know here, my son, my granddaughter, both had it last week.
Well, that's what they say, right? That's what they say, that your body naturally creates an immunity to these little viruses and that. So the fact that people were segregated and they were wearing masks, your body didn't get a chance to do that. So all of a
Yeah.
sudden, it's kind of like when the 5-year-old first starts school, and within 3 weeks they're sick as a dog.
Yeah, well, yeah, they get all the bugs. Well, my wife got her flu shot, my son, but I can't get a flu shot. The only flu shot I ever had just about killed me. I was playing down in Sioux City, and the doctor lined us all up and gave us a flu shot, and I was like those old cowboy movies where guys are shivering. I was shivering. I remember putting a sleeping bag on and waking up, and the thing, I could have wringed it out. It was sweated so much.
Wow.
And for 4 days, if I was that sick now, I'd be a goner. So I'm no way I'm gonna have a flu shot. But I
Jeez.
couldn't have any shots when I was a kid. The only shot I ever had was polio. I haven't had all the other ones. So there must be something I got.
What about Jack Daniels? Can you do shots of that?
Well, I can. I'm more of a beer drinker though.
Okay.
I decided when I was about 22 that if I want to stay out of jail, I better just stick to just